Good evening, everybody. This is the second week of the new year. How are your New Year's resolutions coming along? Would you say you've got milk chocolate or self-control at this time? Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. In research, the recent social psychological research has said that there are two characteristics in life, only two in psychology, that really help us in every aspect of our lives. Those two are intelligence and self-control. Intelligence is something we have very, very little control of. But self-control is a characteristic that every one of us has control of every single hour of every single day. That means it's a very basic psychological characteristic that we have control of to improve our own lives every day from now on. It's especially relevant at this time of year as we're working along on those New Year's resolutions. It turns out that in this field, which I have studied, one researcher has really done the epitome of the research. He's the one researcher who is known and recognized as the one who knows the most and has done the best research on self-control. His name is Roy F. Baumeister. He's a social psychologist, a PhD from Florida State University. And I'll tell you about the research he did so you'll understand how he came to what he has found out about it. Self-control is another word for willpower, so I may use them interchangeably, just so you know. There are two aspects of self-control that are really, really important to understand. They'll help you anytime you're working on changing your own behavior. Anytime you're doing a new exercise program, diet program, if you want to change a behavior like starting to read more or do anything more or less in your own daily life. The first one is that self-control is limited. Just as a muscle has a certain amount of energy in it, and if you use the muscle over and over, the muscle becomes tired. It's the same with self-control. Our self-control is a characteristic inside our brain, which, as we use it, gets depleted. The word that Dr. Baumeister calls is ego depletion. That's what he calls it when we use up our self-control. Now, the way he found this out was he took students and put them into groups in order to test their self-control. He first had them split into the two groups, and each one of them was in a certain waiting room, after which the groups would go into another room and have to solve an impossible problem. It was a problem that actually has no answer. So they could work and never come up to an answer for it. What happened was, though, one of the groups got to sit in the waiting room and eat delicious hot chocolate chip cookies. Just eat those chocolate chip cookies all they wanted. Then they went and solved the impossible problem, or worked on it. Those people worked on the problem for 20 minutes because they didn't have to exercise any self-control in the waiting room. So their self-control was at a high level. They worked 20 minutes on the math problem. The other group sat in the waiting room, smelling chocolate chip cookies, looking at and smelling chocolate chip cookies they could not eat, but they could eat radishes. That group only worked on the problem for 8 minutes because they had used so much self-control, having to keep themselves from eating those delicious, touching and eating those delicious cookies, that they were worn out. And they said, I don't want to work anymore on this problem. And they walked away. They gave up on it. So that just shows that control or willpower is a quantifiable, you can put a number on it, you have a certain amount of it, and if you use it up over here, you're not going to have it over here. That's very important to understand. And he actually said too that anytime we make decisions, we are using up our willpower, this same substance in our brain, we're using it up. So he actually had adults time themselves. Every time that they were using up their willpower by either stopping themselves from doing something they wanted to do or making decisions, they had to press a little timer. And he found out that the average adult in society is using our self-control 3 to 4 hours every day. Think about that. Every day you are controlling yourself 3 to 4 hours. No wonder when you get home from work, it's hard for you not to have that chocolate when you are hungry, or try to have these small portions of foods you don't like on your plate. No wonder, because you've depleted so much self-control. So the implications are a couple or three. One, only work on one project on yourself at a time. Exercise, diet, whatever it is, only work on one at a time. You're already depleting your self-control all the rest of the time. Same with your children. Don't make them do many, many difficult projects. Just work on one thing. Secondly, prepare for the difficult times. If you know you're going to go to a party with a lot of sweet foods, then eat stuff you really like, a big helping of lasagna before you go so you can avoid those treats. And third, go easy on yourself. If you have a bad day, forgive yourself and start over the next day, because it is hard to stick with your self-control. But there is hope, because the second characteristic is self-control or willpower can be built up, just like a muscle can get stronger with exercise. So what he says is, if you practice doing something in an unusual way, if I'm usually right-handed, but practice using my left hand, even if it's unrelated to my dieting, just doing things a different way every day, make yourself a little uncomfortable, that will build up your self-control. Or secondly, having a piece of candy 20 minutes before the meal will help you to control your appetite. Not because it fills you up, but that glucose, the sugar going to your brain, will help your brain to fill up with a little more self-control, and you can control then what you eat. So glucose to the brain, sipping lemonade, he says, will help your self-control to be built up as well. So those are some things you can do. Your self-control is limited, but can be built up over time. So next year, my friends, what I'm hoping is when I ask you, do you have milk chocolate or self-control, I'm hoping you will all say to me, Helen, we have self-control. Madam Toastmaster.